Well, Tasha and Russell, they both love reading books. Tasha and Russell, they both love reading books. Well, what do you do when you share some
Welcome to the
love? Well, you start a
119th
club,
episode
you
of the
start a club,
ABC
an
Pod, the
adult
Adult
book
Book
club,
Club
an
with
adult
Taja and
book
Russell. I am Russell.
club,
She
and
is
a
Taja.
Hey.
Hey, and welcome back
podcast.
everybody to the podcast where we drink and we read things. And on this episode, we read Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. But before we get to that, it has once again been 3 weeks, folks, as we got things going on in our lives. But Taja, what have you been up to during that time?
Well, we had a little saga with Barry's teeth and his crappy teeth, I guess, hereditarily speaking. Um, so he had to have oral surgery. And that I don't remember if he'd had the toothache the last time we'd recorded.
He
It probably
did.
had.
He had seen like a surgeon who said he couldn't help him and had to
Yeah.
refer him to another. Yeah.
Yeah, so he went like to our dentist, then he went to an endodontist, and then to an oral surgeon. Finally, the oral surgeon could help him, but it was like a month he had to wait to get
Ugh.
in. Which like he wasn't in any pain any longer, which was great. Because they'd gotten rid of the infection with antibiotics, so all good. And then he had to have stitches in his gums. They still are there, they're healing. But he had the procedure done like a week before last weekend. And so he was still in pain. So he didn't come to the first night of Spring Fling. And that night he texted because he'd found something caught in his teeth and went to floss and popped another crown off from the other side of his mouth. So he was just a hot mess. He got his crown put on Wednesday. Right when we got back, he had called our dentist on Tuesday because obviously Memorial Day was
Yeah.
closed, blah blah blah. And they fit him in right away, and it was like tough to get back in, but it's all good, like no problems. No other issues with the teeth or that tooth anyway, knock on wood. And the dentist told him that, like, for all you people, if you have crowns, know that if they fall out, you need to get them dealt with as immediately as possible because if like a few days even go by, your teeth migrate. So like they sometimes can't even put it back in. Like
Oh
it
wow.
barely fit when he did it. And our dentist, was telling him it's happened to people that have like been on vacation like in another part of the world.
Yeah.
And it's not replaceable anymore. Which is wild. So the more you know.
Fucking teeth are wild in general. I
Dude,
just I don't love them. I don't love
no. My coworker calls them your outside bones.
them. Yes. Uh,
And it's
yeah.
so stupid that they're not part of like health insurance.
Not part of your body.
No,
Sorry.
not part of your body, not like an integral part of your health, actually, your teeth or
I
anything.
I always love that saying that dentists have overall health starts with oral health because it's all right there. It's like,
Hey, there
but
you go.
not with health insurance.
Nope. And then right after spring fling, I had a random allergic reaction to, or maybe a bug bite. I don't know, but I woke up to go to work bright and early, and my like left eye was almost completely swollen shut.
Jesus.
It's fine now. Few days on
You can see on
Benadryl.
YouTube.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Those of you who can see my face, it was like way more hidden when I was wearing my glasses. So I had like gotten to work after taking some Benadryl, and it was still puffy, but it wasn't like thankfully painful or itchy or anything. And then when I took my glasses off, people were like, "Ooh." Um,
That's always the reaction you're looking
I know.
for,
I mean,
right?
it's my face, so I get it. Um, and then yeah, of course, Spring Fling happened. Spring Fling
Yeah.
19. I was writing down in here and I was like, we should have missed opportunity. We should have called it Weirdly Furious.
Weirdly curious.
Because it was Fast and the Furious
It
themed.
was Fast and the
Um,
Furious theme.
and we did a lot of really fun car related and family related things. It was really fun. I think that was one of my favorite things. We also got back because before Spring Fling, we had tried to watch all of the Fast and Furious movies. We got up to seven before camp,
Impressive.
and we just finished nine last night. So nine is the most ridiculous. Well, we haven't seen 10 yet, so they could raise the bar, but nine is so absurd.
They are all absurd.
They're all absurd, but that's like next level. Like
Yeah.
Cars in space. Anyway, what a great franchise.
I mean, it gave us plenty to work with,
It
so
sure
that
did.
was very kind of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's been all 3 weeks were before camp, planning for camp, camp, and now recovering from
Yeah.
camp. Um, my body is so broken. Like,
Not even a little bit surprised.
oh, my back is just It's like normally it takes a day or two. Like yesterday, I got off the couch and threw my back, and I was like, oh, this is
Oh,
fun.
yeah.
So like everywhere I'm going, I'm very 90-year-old
Slow,
man, like
wobbly.
trying to keep my spine as straight as possible. Killing it. This is only 38. Can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah, 40 is great. You
Ugh,
sneeze wrong and
can't wait
it's
to get
all
there.
downhill.
Can't wait to get robotic spines. Yeah, so for me, it was really just a focus on trying to come up with the ideas for camp and the different things we could do. It was really funny because Lee and I will always reach out to each other and kind of see what page we're on. And I don't think we've ever been on more of the same page.
Mm.
Like the idea of the Matchbox cars, when I sent that to her, she said it to me. She was like, "This is what I
Oh,
was thinking too." And it was like, oh, "Okay, samesies." The idea for obstacle course came through just working with her on some different things. The variety show came together really easily. This is our first year in a long time. We had 3 acts instead of two,
hey.
where we had an act with more than one song in it. So that was fun. I went over the Friday before camp and or like the week before to record those songs when she got out of work. And so we recorded all that. It was really fun. Just it's always interesting when you hang out with just one of us, like one family,
Yeah.
because then Penny's there too, of course, their daughter, and she was wanted to say goodnight to me, so I like went to hug her goodnight, and she was like, "Oh, give me a kiss." And I went to like kiss her on the forehead, and she moved her head up to try to kiss me on the lips, and I was just like, "No, honey, we don't do that."
Hilarious. I heard about that.
I was like, "I no, here, back to your mom." So that was great. Everything came together really well, and like I've been trying to like not. Sometimes I think I get my hopes up too high, or like if everything doesn't go to plan, whatever. And like this year, I was like, we're not going to do that. But we were. I think the smartest thing we've done in recent years has been like, okay, we don't have to plan everything, but like let's have a plan. So Saturday, looking at the bad weather on Sunday and being like,
Yeah.
okay, what can we accomplish
Yes.
realistically? And it was like, here's 3 things. Can we do that? We can do that. Okay, having that done, it then made Sunday. Like when I woke up on Sunday because I was up first. Nice brag. Uh,
Always.
I was like a little bummed because of the weather. And
Yeah.
by the time I think you or Nern, whoever was next up, had
I
gotten
think
up,
it
I
was
had like
there.
gotten myself out of it because I was like, no,
Nice.
like I keep trying to tell myself that it's like pick, think of where you are,
Good things.
be happy, and like it could be worse or whatever. So well, the weather could have been better. We still had a great Sunday.
We beat
Um,
the Russians
and we
like
beat the Russians 228 times
so.
that ball stayed in the air.
Which, yeah, I feel like we need some context here. It's just keep the ball in the air.
It's like what you do with a balloon or a child's game, and we just keep that ball in the air. It's actually really hard as a group
It
to get over
is, and it's
100.
so fun. It's also really hard because we tend to be drinking.
Yes.
I mean, like the when we played True American, I think I started drinking at like 9:30.
Also, yes. I mean, that's the point of camp, right?
It is. It is. And I will say, because I have been, now that I'm in my 40s, I am much better at not necessarily self-regulating. I'm still drinking quite a bit, but I am sprinkling in water
Nice.
intermittently, and then I don't feel shitty the
Yeah.
next. I mean, bodily, yes, but not like, like, not stomachly.
I had 0 hangovers this weekend.
Oh,
It was
amazing.
incredible.
Yeah.
And I think for the same reason, not sprinkling in waters, but maybe just like slowing down at some points. The variety show
Also
saved my
starting to
life, where normally the variety show is all like shots and extra beers and all this. Like
Yeah.
it was like a nice hour-and-a-half break where I think I only had maybe 2 beers.
Oh,
So I know, right? Compared to True American, where it was all
I
of
also think it probably helped that the beer theme of the weekend was Corona, and that's like pretty mild.
Yes, and they're so delicious. I'm
I don't
working through.
like
I
them.
ended up with a lot of beer from camp. I was like, anybody? Okay, just me. So yeah, I've got way too many Corona Lights
I was
left.
like, I just took my stuff back. That's
Did
all.
you? So this wasn't you?
No.
Oh, okay. I assumed it was. Um, Anyway, 603 Hard Seltzer. Shout out to our new sponsor. That's not a thing.
They're gonna be like cease and desist.
Yeah, immediately stop. We don't want to be associated with you. Okay, we've rambled on long enough, but camp was great. Camp is always great.
Mhm.
And I will try to remember that we beat the Russians 228 times by remembering February 28th. I think if
Mm.
we treat it as a date, we have a better chance. So, on that note, this is your every episode reminder to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Adult Book Club 21. You can find us there, like, subscribe, welcome, talk to us, whatever. Adult Book Club, all one word, and then the number 21. Go to anything there and we will see it. So, back to the book, which once again is Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. And when Taja was talking about this book with Barry, he asked how we find these things. And this was another one of those ones that I came across by just going through Goodread recommendations based on what I had read and looking for books that were like 4.5 stars, and then being like, okay, so what popped about this one, I know Taja especially is a fan of Indigenous stories, and also that it was kind of a nonfiction, although it was fiction. It was a blend. Based on her family. So it's like, okay, that seems like it's a little bit something different for us. And it was supposed to be about the wilderness. It was about a whole lot more than that. We'll get into it. But that's how we came across it. So, Betty was the second novel published by McDaniel and was originally released in 2020. She describes herself as a self taught author with no formal education and wrote many unpublished pieces before her debut novel, The Summer That Melted Everything, in 2016. After Betty, she released On a Savage Side in 2023 and a YA series titled The Wand Keepers, with the first two books being released by 2025. She began writing Betty after her mother was brave enough to recount what her life was growing up. Although McDaniel never met her grandfather, Landon Carpenter, his character was created by weaving stories together told by her mother, her grandmother Alka, and other family members. While some of the story is fictional, many of the stories about Landon and the abuse that Elka suffered as a child are not. Those are real. Real life Betty was also a writer and a poet. The poem My Broken Home that starts the book was written by her. So, if that made no sense, the author's mother's name is Betty. This story is based about her. There's some real stuff about her family in here and some other things that she kind of mashed some people together or created different spaces for them to go in. I will say her three novels that I mentioned there all take place in Breathed, Ohio, which is where Betty is set. It is a fictional town, but McDaniel, like her mother, Betty, grew up in rural Ohio near the Appalachians. So that was kind of her bringing her world, making a fictional world like her world. So, Taja, if you want to read us the jacket, we will jump into this.
All right. A girl comes of age against the knife. So begins the story of Betty Carpenter. Born in a bathtub in 1954 to a white mother and a Cherokee father, Betty is the sixth of 8 children. The world they inhabit is in the rural town of, is it Breathed?
I think you're saying like you say
Breathed?
breathe and then make it
Breathed?
past tense to breathe
Breathed,
or breathe.
Ohio. Okay.
Yeah.
It's one of the the world they inhabit in the rural town of Breathed, Ohio, is one of poverty and violence, both from outside the family and devastatingly from within. The lush landscape, rich with birdsong, wild fruit, and blazing stars, becomes a kind of refuge for Betty. But when her family's darkest secrets are brought to light, she has no choice but to reckon with the brutal history hiding in those in the hills, as well as with the heart-wrenching cruelties and incredible characters she encounters. Despite the hardships she faces, Betty is resilient. Her curiosity about the natural world, her fierce love for her sisters, and her father's brilliant stories are kindling for the fire of her own imagination. And in the face of all to which she bears witness, Betty discovers an escape. She begins to write. She recounts the horrors of her family's past and present with pen and paper and buries them in the dirt, moments that have stung her so deeply she could not tell them until now. Inspired by generations of her family, Tiffany McDaniel sets out to free the past by delivering this heartbreaking yet magical story, a remarkable novel that establishes her as one of the most important voices in American fiction.
Nice. Now, I will say before we get started, we've done this on a couple other episodes. Just kind of a sensitivity warning here, as we did not know what we were getting into with this story, so we want you to be better prepared than we are. There are quite a few scenes that deal with self-harm, uh, many. There's also some mental health conversations that happen in here. And I think the biggest one, there are quite a few instances of rape and mistreatment of both adults and children. So, uh, if any of that is, something that you don't want to be a part of, we understand.
Yep.
But we're going to dive into this book and talk about it as delicately as we can. I will say this book is incredibly emotional
It was.
and well written, which makes it even more difficult as you're going through and reading those things. So, most of that will be in spoilers. So, if you want to stick around for the pre-spoilers, you can get more of an idea of what the story was about. So we're going to start, obviously, with Betty, as the story follows her from birth until she turns 18. I was wondering what stood out to you about our main character.
So strong.
Yeah.
Like, even though we meet her, like, when she's first a baby. And I guess it's like basically her POV the whole time, um, effectively. And so I feel like we really get a taste of her. Um, she's very um creative and talented, but like I think any really good storyteller has a really good memory. And I have a friend like this, my friend Emily, who listens to this podcast. Hi. Um, she has an amazing memory. Like we'll be talking about stories from our childhood, and she'll be like, word for word remembering things that happened. And I'm like, are you sure that was me? Like, I don't even remember this occurring. But she is also a fantastic storyteller, very creative person, very much a writer. And I think those two things are the Venn diagram is a circle.
Yes, the
Um,
Venn diagram is a circle.
yeah. Um, and yeah, I mean, she's kind of a badass. Like I really felt for her and I felt attached to her. Um, yeah, I think we got a really good picture painted for us, and I think it's really sweet that it's like the author's mom that she's doing this for. I'm like already emotional.
It's gonna be a long
First
pause.
question.
The first thing I wrote down was her strength too, because I think that came across so clearly, even from a young age. Like that was a little bit of a hard part in this story, as the parts are written based on years. And of course, we kind of jump until she's like 6 or 7, I want to say, and then we're going from there. And then it's like 2 year jumps where it's like, no, I'm 10 to 11 or whatever. And trying to keep track of that because her actions are so much more adult than what her years would suggest. I loved her father, and we'll get into him later on, but how much he wanted her to embrace their Cherokee ancestry and how he would tell them the stories of them. And she mentions it, and Tiffany McDaniel, the author, mentions the story of the three sisters, where for Betty it's Freya, Flossie, and then her. And the first sister is the maize that stands tall and gives you structure, and the second sister is beans that gives you sustenance and grows upon the corn, and then the third sister is the squash who grows close to the ground, but the leaves cover and protect the dirt from the weeds and all that. So together, these three things can grow strong together. And how Betty was the squash for her sisters and how she just had to be the protection for them and kind of do her best to like help in this world. And I thought it was interesting that she took that on again from a young age where she's 9. A lot of her stories happen from like that 9 to 12 range.
Yeah,
I feel like that's like the meat of like our act two. And I'm just sitting there being like, no, she's acting older than Flossie the
for sure.
entire time,
Oh
which
yeah.
is maybe middle kid syndrome, even though how can you be the middle of 8? But
Little sister.
yeah, Flossie definitely had that. So I was drawn to her, as you were saying, the perfect storyteller. Her relationship with her father and how much like I think we all try to do this, where you try to indulge your parents, right? And there is a change you see at certain times where, as she got older, she's like, Dad, you're just telling stories. But for the longest time, having her dad tell her these things and then bring them back up, like you said, kind of the memory side of it, where she'd be like, Remember, you told me this, 5 years ago, and I remember and all that. So she was like, I think if you're looking for the ideal sibling friend, anything, like Betty came across that way, where she's going to protect you no matter what. And she is always going to be there for you. It was just such a great like we talked about in a couple of recent episodes where it's like I fucking hated the main character. Why did you write this?
Oh
This
yeah,
is the exact opposite where you were
for sure.
rooting for Betty from the first page. It was just
Yes.
incredible.
Yeah, and I will just tack on, in addition to all of that, that I found, I mean, obviously her strength, but she, I think, was one of the siblings, maybe one of the only sisters that looked native.
Yes.
And I think that she had this sort of extra special connection with her father. I think the storytelling thing drew them together as well.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, he called her his little Indian. And I think that he was doing that to like bolster that side of herself because she is the one that really struggles with like racism and stuff, and more so than the other siblings, I think, or at
Yeah.
least that we know of or that we hear about. And I think that that was like such an empowering thing to do. Oh my God. Barry just poked his head in earlier and was like, "Why are you doing this to yourself?"
Um, it's going to be a long pod, folks.
Yeah, it is.
I agree with you, like the how she embraced that heritage, and yeah, I think her dad making it extra special for her. I feel like we didn't really get a description of. I mean, we did, but I don't really remember Trustin. But it didn't feel like he faced that same kind of hatred
No.
that Betty definitely did. I know with her sisters, they both had kind of like the long blonde hair that their
Blonde
mother
hair.
had.
I think
Uh,
she was like the darkest skinned
yeah,
of them too, and like
and
her
even from
dad dealt with a lot of that growing up, so I think they really connected over like him trying to, in like the, I guess, best way possible or nicest way possible, like make her connected to that part of herself that so that she wouldn't like feel ashamed. Oh my God.
And I loved it because he talks about how important women were in the
Yes.
Cherokee um, way of life, and how
Yes.
everything was based on the power of the woman, and how they did. I mean, they were the center of the tribe, so it was so much more important. And I appreciated and hated that juxtaposition between the life she was leading in this Christian Ohio, when you saw the comparisons, because for fuck's sakes, I mean, this is something that we still deal with today. You especially still deal with a lot of our listeners. Like women, the things that we do and say and treat our women is fucking insane. And while it's marginally gotten better, it has miles to go because it's just really despicable. So I loved and hated seeing how her father described how they were treated within the Cherokee people compared to how they were treated by the white men, basically. And it's so backwards and upsetting. So I really loved how he made sure to not push, but like lift her up. Great hand signals working there. So she would understand that, there's nothing wrong with the way you look. There's nothing wrong with who you are and where you come from. And you're actually way more powerful than these other people. So don't listen to them.
Yes. Ugh.
Yeah, we'll talk more about her relationship with her dad in the next question, I guess. But it was like really, I mean, I found it interesting. Again, going back to that note that the author had put online about how she never met her grandfather. So this is all just based off of stories that she heard about him, and like they kind of get into that in the end. And we'll talk about that in spoilers. But it just creates this person that you think is above, like is a mythical, right? But you hear it from everyone, so it's like, no, that's just who they were, which is even more impressive, incredible, insane. Like, it's
Yeah.
crazy. So let's talk about those parents. So in the story, Betty is one of 8 children to Landon and Alka Carpenter. I was wondering what you thought of her parents as we got to know them.
I mean, Landon is such a hero. Um, he's such an amazing sounding dad for all the reasons that we were just talking about. I think that he, seeing the pictures of real Landon, in that blog or whatever it was that you'd sent, not what I pictured.
Nah, me neither.
Um, which I'm not really sure what I pictured, but I very much appreciated obviously his storytelling abilities and the way that he like really showed love for all of his kids, like all the time.
Yeah.
And the way that he, I mean, like when Alka and him first meet, and they have sex, and then she's like, I'm pregnant. And he goes and beats up her dad because her dad had beat her for finding out or like telling them that she was pregnant. Immediately warmed me to him.
Yeah.
Like vigilante justice.
I mean,
Um,
attacked him and tried to cut his nose off because
yes, to let his soul out.
that's where the soul is stored, is in the bridge of your nose. And then he even says like he
He's
didn't
like,
get
you
to
don't
cut
even
it all the
have
way
one.
through, but it didn't matter because he didn't have
Yeah,
his soul there
yeah.
anyway.
So like very much endeared me to him.
Yeah.
That first like introduction. And then yeah, I think just his passing on of knowledge of like the Cherokee way and just like everything that he's learned in life. He's done like jack of all trades kind of stuff, going from job to job. It must have been really difficult to be moving around with such a large family and be below the poverty line, I assume.
Oh yeah.
Um, I found it really interesting that when they got to Breathe to that, um, he was kind of, their family was shunned, kind of, sort of, but then, like, I don't think this is much of a spoiler. Like, he's dead. We know this now. Um, like, how many people showed up?
Yeah.
Um, so, like, while he might have been a little bit of an outcast, like, he still was doing the town a solid and the people of the town a solid. And I think that speaks to his character.
Yeah, and
Like,
as much as people wanted to hurl slurs at him and attack his way of life, they would still come to him when they
yep,
had a headache or
yep.
something because he was a medicine man.
And
Uh,
it worked. Like, they were getting results from him.
Yeah, because he knew the way of the plants and everything.
Yep.
And like I really that's something I've always wished that I understood more. Like I feel like that's something we've really lost touch is our touch with
Yeah.
nature and how you can just how he would be like, "Oh, you're feeling with this? Okay, go get these three things. We're
Yes.
gonna mix them together, make you a tea."
Yep.
Or if that's happening, you need to like place this bark on you and it will like pull the infection out or whatever it is. Like just
Yeah.
as he's telling those stories, and then he's telling it in a way where it's becoming an adventure. It's like
Hmm.
he's adding the fantasy to this, where he talks about how he climbed a rope to
Hmm.
heaven at
Yeah.
one point, and he saw the jars on the beach of all the jars of the sands of your lives, and search for specific ones, like the glass. Bird in his heart that
Oh,
you had to make sure to take care of, and how just everything he talked about was so magical and
but
like
it was
musical.
magical, but it was also like giving you, it had like a theme. It had, there was like a reason behind it. It was like an old sitcom where there was always like a message.
Yeah, yeah.
That
The
like all
more
the
you know.
stories might have sounded fantastical, but there was this like serious message within them.
And I think that was one of the best parts of the relationship he had with Betty. And touch on this, where like she would call back to those, where she'd be like, "No, you can't do that because of this. Remember, this is how you got that, or this was that stone you found, the Apache tear." That would make it so I would never cry because the Apache woman had cried so much. They do it for me, and those kind of things, and just he was such again another powerful character that you believe is or you want to believe in, and you just think he's like bigger than like he's too big to exist, and then you hear those stories and it really just makes it sound like he was just an incredible man who was dealt a really shit sandwich for
Yeah.
most of his life and just didn't let the world beat him down.
Well, and he like was still so capable. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
they had a shitty situation in terms of resources, but then he was like so his ability to make stuff out of almost nothing was really impressive. Like there's furniture all over their house that he's made and his carving and just such a yeah, larger than life character.
yeah, and a man back when men
Yeah.
were men, and he was even
Yeah.
better than them.
And we're good men.
Yeah. The last thing I think the how he like even we see all our characters kind of have mental moments where there's breakdowns and things like that. And for him, this is a little spoiler, but it's not. When Freya gets super sick,
Mm.
right, and they don't know what's wrong with her, and they're trying to heal her, and he's like, we have to plant the corn right now,
Mm.
and Betty's like, it's the middle of
It's the
winter, it's not going to
winter.
grow, and he's like, it doesn't matter, like we need to plant it because that will give strength to your sister because Freya is the corn, she needs this, like we need to do this. And she talks about the whole like the fact that he was a man that uh even when there was nothing he could do, he would find a way to do something to kind of push that. And even if it's just to get everybody else on board with believing, like, we need good thoughts, so we're
Yeah.
going to do this. Yes, this may sound crazy, but this is what we're going to do. As you pointed out, like he was like very good at knowing the specific needs of each of his kids, and he
Mm-hmm.
treated them each differently.
Yeah.
And we see with Flossie where she always says that Betty was his favorite. Flossie was just a drama queen, but that's okay. But I do wonder how that affected everyone's relationship with
Mm.
Alka, their mother, because I think she sees that too, especially with Betty. Obviously, as we're getting this from Betty's point of view, there's the stories of her father, which are many and are incredible. And then there's the stories with her mother, which are few and are incredible in a different way.
Yeah.
So what did you think of Alka as we got to know her?
I mean, she's just so damaged. Like the trauma that she experienced, which is likely generational trauma too. Um, she, there were times that I hated her.
Yeah,
Um, but I mostly just felt bad for her. I think that she loved her kids in such a different way. Sometimes it seemed like it wasn't love. Um, but I think that was more like her inability to express
yeah,
or to even like be in touch with her feelings about everything. I mean, sometimes it didn't even seem like she loved Landon, but then she wore the half the apple necklace.
yeah.
And yeah, I think complicated is the best way to describe their relationship.
It did seem like she was always so cold.
Yeah.
It's just watching the rest of the season two of The Pit, and
Yeah.
there's that scene where the guy's in the hospital with his wife. They were like in a car accident, and he asks Noah Wile's character, like, "Is this what it's all about?" Like, you realize like all those they were fighting or something. He's like, "Nothing matters. This actually matters." Like, Alka was kind of that way too. Like, as
Yeah.
shit hit the fan, which it did frequently, you kind of finally saw that like warm motherly instinct take over,
Mhm.
where suddenly she was there for her kids, and like it felt like, and I think she was portrayed this way for a reason, she was like very absent. Like, they
Yeah.
talk early on about how they would find her just sitting in a room in the middle of winter with all the windows open and the wind and snow and everything blowing in on her, and just kind of there but not there, and how Landon would like close all the windows and clean everything up, be like, it's winter out, you know so you'd wonder how much of her was there. But then in times of like uh
Stress.
emergency,
Yeah.
like when Freya does get sick, you see a completely you see the mother I think she could be, if she wasn't trapped in her head so much. None of that obviously is her problem or her
No,
fault,
her fault.
as we'll get
Yeah.
into later. But it was a weird side by side, because I think as a reader you're picking a favorite, right? Because you're getting so much more time with dad,
Yeah.
and then you're looking at mom like, what's her problem? And I wonder how much of that transferred to in their lifestyle, where she could see, because of who she was and how she was, she couldn't have that connection. And all the kids were really gravitating towards Landon. And I feel like that probably hurt her relationship with them as well.
Yeah, that's true. But then there were moments like when um Betty was kind of not pleased with Landon and like kind of was cold shouldering him, and Alka was basically like calling her out on it and was like reminding her that like she shouldn't be doing that. So I don't know, it's like I agree. She is disassociating most of the time for a variety of reasons that are outside her control and her fault, but she is sometimes present. And when she was present, I felt like um kind of a totally different person, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it seemed to be more understanding of what her family was going through in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like you said, they were definitely below the poverty line. They were definitely struggling a lot. And it was just, yeah, it was weird to see the two parents side by side until you get the whole picture. And again, like we know it's interesting because we know Landon's trauma. He's very open about what he's
Yeah.
gone through, and obviously it's completely different than what Alka went
Right.
through. But once you learn her trauma, it definitely changed how I viewed her character. Where I was like, oh, this makes a
Makes some
lot more sense
sense.
now
Yeah.
for why she would be that way. So moving on, we have our story, which is set mostly in the fictional town of Breathed, Ohio. Did anything stand out to you about our setting?
I mean, not really stood out. It fully makes sense for America in the time
Mm,
period, what, 60s for most of the chunk of it,
mhm.
um, into the 70s. Yeah, like hella racist.
Yeah,
And um sometimes to like a little bit of a tropey level, but I feel like that's kind of the point of a setting like that where you need to drive home those points.
yeah,
Um yeah, I mean nothing really stood out to me about the setting. I think a little bit of what I was saying before about how they were a little bit of outcasts and stuff. But then people still showed up
yeah.
and used the Landon's skills, and which I guess like usury is common as well. Okay, I'm gonna roll that back. Something did stand out, and maybe it's because I didn't grow up in this time period, but um, the school situation that Betty went through and how she
Yeah.
was effectively beaten by the teachers, that was incredibly distressing, and I feel like probably accurate. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
you're really hoping that one teacher would stand up for her, and
yeah,
never got that story.
nope. No,
Uh,
especially because like she is really talented. I mean, she's talking about writing stories when she was like really little.
yeah,
So I find it hard to believe that she wouldn't be like a really good student, but I guess that racism just goes like so deep that no one could see beyond her dark
and
skin.
it felt like it was just her, kind of as you mentioned with her siblings. It seemed like she was definitely the darkest of them, seemed the most
Yeah.
Native American. So she stood out more. Like that scene when they first get back to Breathed, when they first move there,
Yeah.
and she plays ball with Ruthie's next door,
That fucking bitch.
and they're best friends for all of 5 seconds until her parents come yelling at her for playing with a not white girl. And then like the father grabs the ball and he's like, no, I can't even touch it because it's filled with germs or whatever. I was really waiting for Ruthie's to like come around, like because they're still children, even though you're being fed that. I was hoping like maybe at school, but then no, because at school there's
The
15
cliques.
Ruthie's and one Betty, so they just team up against her. Like her, yeah, her school life was super upsetting. And like even as she grew older, when she has the meeting with the principal because she wore shorts instead of a
Oh my
skirt.
gosh. Her clapback about like women and Cherokee culture, I was like, yes, girl.
Yeah. And he's like, no, you are
Yeah.
replacing men.
And then he's
God
like
damn
dancing
it.
around in like a blanket of
Yeah.
like a skirt. What a tool.
Ugh, people are the worst. So yeah, I think the setting, and obviously she went through this, so it would make
Yeah.
sense that it fits, right? But I thought that all worked out really well, and
Yeah.
then but still having like the woods to run into, the hills
Yes.
surrounding her, where I do think like for her family they needed to be surrounded by nature. Otherwise it obviously her dad and would have struggled, and I think that's part of how they were moving around so much. And we learned early on that her mother was the one who wanted to get out of Ohio because that's where
Because her
her and Landon
family's
met. That's
there.
where she was born. But eventually they moved for like, I forget, I think 4 or 5 years or something like that.
Mhm.
And eventually she's like, it's time to go home. Like, I can't keep moving around. As you mentioned, Landon was
Right.
kind of a master of all trades. So yes, all that worked. I think the fact that they lived in a house that was basically dilapidated because people thought it was haunted because a family disappeared and there was 8 bullet holes in the wall but no blood. That kind of situation made sense for them too, for how they would
Yeah.
ever be able to afford their own place,
Yeah.
to make it their own and all that. So I thought there was, again, I wonder with all of this, I wonder how much of it was real more than what she like talked about,
Mhm.
where Like even I think there was a picture on the thing where it's like, oh, here's Betty on Shady Lane. So like she like pulled from that stuff. So I was like, okay, was the house really that way? Was that part of this, the
Yeah.
story of the disappearance and everything? So I just thought like I thought it was really well thought out again. The good and bad that came with this, and we'll get into it in spoilers, is how well this book was written, how
Yeah.
believable it was, how it felt like you could be with Betty at any point. And unfortunately, there are points you don't want to be with Betty. So before we get into that, we have your get to know your podcaster question. So out of the eight siblings, or out of the eight children, two of Betty's siblings die when they are very young. So of the other five, who did you find any similarities to how you were when you were growing up? This can be how they acted, what they liked, their relationship with each other, anything you want here. So the five that we're talking about: Leland, Freya, Flossie, Trustin, or Lint.
Um, it's tough. I don't think any of them are like a spot on
Yeah, they're
thing,
not
but
going to be one for one. I think that's a good
no.
thing in every
Yeah,
case.
right. But I think maybe the closest might be Trustin. 'Cause like he's really he's really a sweetheart. He's super talented. I'm not saying that I'm super talented, but he he's a little bit like separate from the family. Like the stories that we hear about him aren't like, the three sisters like hang out together a lot, and like Leland's so much older, or not Leland, yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah, yeah.
Leland is so much older that he's like gone for a good chunk of the story. So I think that the brothers, though they are closer in age, are kind of just like, because Lint is so different, and like I don't know, it felt like Tristan was kind of separate and solo often,
Hmm.
which being an only child, I can relate to that. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the closest because he kind of had like a little bit of a distance. Not that he was creating distance on purpose. It just like he was content doing his own thing and didn't need to like be with everyone all the time.
Yeah, it did seem like when they talked about him and they were like at the covered bridge festival or whatever it was,
Mm.
she like would specifically mention that he's kind of away a little bit sketching,
Mm-hmm.
and like how he would always be drawing and painting and things like that while the rest of the family did their own thing. He was really good with Lynn, and for those who haven't read, we'll get into him in spoilers, but Lynn had some kind of mental disability that affected him, and all of them, I think that the younger ones at least, Trustin and Betty, Freya for sure, Flossie maybe not so much, were really good with Lynn, and I think she even mentioned at some points like Trustin would get tired of Lint because they stayed in the
Yeah.
same room and he would kind of be a shadow at times, but he was
Yeah.
still like a really great brother to him. So I can see that. For me, unfortunately, I think that or whatever, I see reflections of myself in Flossie. Uh,
Oh no,
I was
Russell.
such a fucking like everything, attention whore, drama queen, the whole nine. I would be singing when people didn't want me to sing. I would always be like drama acting, everything. Anytime I got like, yeah, oh yeah. Anytime I could garner attention, I would. If we were doing backyard football and somebody hit me extra hard, I'd be like, oh, make sure everyone knew that it really hurts. I wanted to be an actor for a lot of my teenage years, very similar to Flossie there. I will say I think I'm a lot better to my friends and family than she is,
I would
uh,
say so.
easily. But yeah, I did see like a lot of her. I'm gonna be famous someday, and I'm gonna go to California, and like she went a little bit more extreme than I did, but there was definitely a few times I was like, ah, shit.
That's
Looking
funny.
in the mirror. Yeah, so those are our choices. If you've read the book, feel free to tell us in the comments which sibling you think you most related to. And again, it's never going to be one for one with any of them because, I mean, Tristan was pretty, I don't think he had flaws that we saw or faults, but the rest of them were definitely had their good and bad sides or whatever.
Yeah.
So on that note, we're gonna get to spoilers. Instead of a song, I'm gonna once again give you that warning. So if this is the time, if there's any kind of uh, again like kind of our how would I want to say this, like this is warning.
Yeah, a trigger
um,
warning,
trigger,
basically.
yeah, I'm just trying to stay away from that. I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but there's a lot of talk about self-harm here, about rape, and about just kind of
Abuse.
abuse towards children and others. So now we're going to get into that stuff. So if you want to duck out here, completely understand. So on that note, we're going to move into spoilers, and it starts off really quick. So here we go. On her ninth birthday, Betty's mother, Alka, sits her down and tells her a secret about what happened to her starting when she also turned 9. Alka's mother dressed Alka's mother dressed her daughter up and delivered her to the bedroom she shared with Alka's father and let the man rape her daughter. This would continue for the rest of the time Alka lived with her parents until she left with Betty's father. She was about 17, 18 at that point. She never told anyone else about this and assumed every family was this way. She believed at 9, Betty was old enough to carry the weight of this horror. Betty would also witness sometime in the next couple years her oldest brother Leland raping their sister Freya in the barn. She was too stunned and scared to speak out while it was happening, and when she later told Freya about it, Freya said she was confused and didn't see nothing. If she ever tried to tell anyone, Freya would kill herself and it would be Betty's fault. Time passed and Leland left to live in Alabama. Freya moved out of the house and worked at a diner in town. Betty and her sisters would meet to go swimming during the hot summer nights in the town water tower. Their younger brother, Trustin, would accompany them but was afraid to climb the tower after a fall in his youth hurt him badly. Betty one night explained there was nothing to be afraid of and told Trustin that he should climb the tower and join them, giving him wings made of leaves to catch him if he fell. Trustin would fall off the tower that night and die at only 10 years old. Betty would blame herself for a long time. Her middle sister Flossie had her head in the stars, but when at 16 she attracted the eye of a rich family's son, their mother told her to get pregnant by him so he would marry her and she would no longer be poor. Flossie gave birth to a boy she named Nova, who she wanted nothing to do with. She was soon divorced by her husband and back to being poor, but now with a baby. After a fall cracked his skull, she abandoned Nova and headed to California to become famous. She would die of a drug overdose in 1980. Betty tried to tell her father about Freya and Leland, but Freya slit her wrist in front of everyone before she could. She lived, and Betty agreed to never try to tell again. Freya was happy at the diner she worked at, and one night was talking to Betty about escaping to an ocean somewhere and the two of them heading out together. The next morning, Freya was found dead with her hand stuck in a mayonnaise jar. A bee was stinging her hand. She was inside the jar. She was deathly allergic to bees and died. The town ruled it a suicide because of her earlier attempt. This also brought on one of the most upsetting scenes of Betty driving through town with her father spreading her sister's ashes. We'll get into that. It was so heartbreaking. When Betty was 17, her father died from some illness or from just being old. It wasn't really told. When Leland returned for the funeral, she confronted him, telling him that she knew all his secrets, including that he had no right to be here because Landon was not his father. Betty had pieced her mother's truths together and realized Alka's father had impregnated her. Upon discovering this, she met and slept with Landon soon after. Convinced that the baby was his, Landon married her and never knew the truth about Leland. Leland attempts to threaten Betty and tells her that Freya was pregnant when she died and wanted to keep the baby, which was an abomination. Because of this, he had to kill her using a bee sting so people would believe she killed herself. Betty becomes enraged and threatens him with a shotgun, and Lint backs her up with a slingshot until Leland flees and is never seen again. Betty leaves Breathed at 18 after she graduated high school. Her mother found a job at a shoe factory to support herself and Lint. Lint is around 15 at this time and told her he had to stay home and keep running the herbal remedy setup that he and their father had made in the barn. Betty left to find a new adventure, releasing one last note to her dad on a balloon as she hitchhiked away. Still with us. So before we get into her siblings, because we haven't really discussed them, I want to start with what we learned about Betty's mother and the abuse she went through. What did you think about her story, and did it help you to better understand Alka?
I mean, absolutely horrific. It did help me to better understand her, I guess, sort of mental instability, and her disassociating tendencies. is giving me a little bit of um Last House on Needless Street. Like I'm a little surprised that there weren't more like split personality kind of mental protections that had happened.
Yeah.
I do feel so terrible that she thought that that was the norm. I wonder at what point she realized that it wasn't. Like, was it when um Landon didn't ask her to do that? Or, like I just don't know like how far into life she got before she recognized what was going on,
Yeah.
or what wasn't going on elsewhere. Um, so yeah, definitely shed light on it. I thought that the writing was spectacular. I mean, it was awful subject, but very well done. The like, for lack of a better term, reenactment of it was so traumatizing to read, let alone I imagine to experience. And I like really hope for Betty, for this author's mom, that like that part maybe didn't happen in that
Yeah.
same way. I don't know, but my God. Um, yeah, I mean, I think overall it was just, it's wild. It's
Yeah.
wild because it's true.
And for those who didn't read the book, what Taja is talking about, the reenactment, while her mother tells her this story, she pins Betty down so she can feel the weight of an adult upon her the way she did.
She even
Uh,
puts a pillow over her head for a little bit too.
yeah.
Like,
So there's no like sexual abuse that happens
no,
there, but it is
correct.
like here's how it felt, just so you're aware, and then also it got worse from here. I think you hit on it earlier, and you kind of just touched on it too, just with how well this book was written. And we talked about how it felt like you were with Betty so much that that made this like, I think, unfortunately, we've all heard stories about this, both true and fictional, about this kind of situation. And because of that connection that she has made with Betty, it feels like we are living this moment with her very realistically. And that makes it so much more difficult.
Yeah,
McDaniel, the author, mentioned that this was the hardest scene she had to write, which
no
makes a
doubt.
ton of sense
Yeah.
because this is something that really happened to her grandmother. This was the point where I'm reading the book, and I think at this, there had been kind of hints that there was something going on between Leland and Freya that Freya didn't want specifically, but we hadn't come out and said that. And this was like kind of the first very
Inkling.
large boulder that we pushed off that was like, hey, we're going into some dark stuff. As then she starts losing siblings and kind of the rest of this comes out. So it was powerful.
Hmm.
It was terrible. It's like it's gonna be something that stays with me.
Oh
That
yeah.
again, when I'm looking at this, and I'm like, okay, yeah, their life was difficult, and it was tough when they were growing up. But this is an interesting story. It immediately turned to holy shit, what did I sign us up for?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, this
just
is when Barry was like, "Do you guys not research these things?" So it's like, not.
no, no. And to skip ahead, I understand why people have rated this book so highly.
It's
Like
so well written.
it's a weird situation, definitely for me, and I think we touched on this before, where it's like this book, it's not that it was written badly, it's that it was written really well about terrible things. And that leaves you with a different feeling
Taste.
as you're coming away
Yeah.
from it.
Yeah. I do want to roll back to a sort of the better understanding of Alka after
Yeah.
learning the story. And I think that there's something you'd said earlier about her coldness and her like inability, or seeming inability to like love her kids. And it makes 100% sense to me after learning the story that she never had a good representation of what motherly love was.
Yeah.
Because like you can pretend to be a great mother, but if you do that to your kid,
That's
you don't know.
neither one is great, but you do question which one is worse, being the one to deliver the child or being the one to do that to the child. So yeah, I
I
could.
mean, the father has is awful and is doing probably the worst thing imaginable. Um, but the mother, I mean, like, and just hearing the story about their relationship, like when Betty and the kids are like going over to the house and they're not even allowed in to the home, and they get to witness what the subservience of this mother, like,
Yeah.
I want to say it's shocking, but it's not really, just like the time period and like who those types of people are. The dude, I mean, the dad,
Yeah. Yeah.
grandpa, that like it's despicable, but it happens. And it makes sense to me. Again, the generational trauma, like this mom, Alka, is suffering from the effects of her parents and then her mom in particular, like you said, what's worse, like the complacency, but also the probable inability to stand up for the situation. Like she was a non-entity in this home.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what power she actually would have been able to exert
And we don't
if
know
she...
what her upbringing was like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it just feels
It's
like it's a trickle down of
yeah.
shit.
It was seeing then how his name was Grandpappy Lark is how they referred to him. How he treated the kids, where he had that cherry tree
Mm,
that they could eat the fruit on the ground, I guess, but don't you dare touch that tree. As you said, they're not allowed to go inside the house because they're all
they're
mixed
half
race
breeds.
children.
Yep.
So they're not in the way he looked down upon Landon. And it's like, again, one of those things where his righteous bullshit because he's a white man makes him think he's so much better. And really, he's like not worth the
The
dirt on
worst.
Landon's
Yeah.
shoes when you see how they treat the people that they love. It was just I like I just kept writing because as I write these questions, it's like, okay, how are we going to talk about this? And then I write my answers, and I just wrote like fuck, and then I'd write like a sentence, and I'd be like fuck. I mean, it just like really, it's just so fucking
It's so
uh
intense, but
yeah.
it's so, I mean, like, this is a real thing that happened, and it is a real thing that happens. And
Hmm.
that's what makes it so despicable.
Yeah.
Like, I know we read like Harlan Coben stuff, and we're like, how can he envision these crazy things? This feels like it should be a crazy fiction,
Yeah.
and it's not.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah. As far as Alka and how she treats her kids, there
Mhm.
was another moment too. I don't think it was at the same time. I think it was maybe later. She's talking to Betty, and she tells her that through all this, her mother, Alka's mother, told her that she would never know love. She would
Yeah,
never feel love. Nobody would ever love her because of who she is and what she is and all this. And like that also makes sense for how she treats her kids. If
yeah.
she just believes she's
And
not
how she,
worthy of love or whatever or can't love,
yeah.
then she's not going to be able to have that. Like, I'd be interested to know in real life if Alka ever got over that. If ever, like, maybe she found something as like a grandmother, or was able to get help at some point. I mean, you really hope so,
I think
because
that like
Jesus.
the be loved and find love and stuff, like I think I agree that that impacts her relationship with her children, but it also impacts the relationship with herself. Like
Yeah, oh, yeah,
her relationship with Landon was such like I think he really loved her and he like put in a lot of effort and she didn't necessarily reciprocate. She did, but it felt like she was reining it in, probably
yeah,
because she's been um, groomed by her mom to think that she doesn't deserve love, so like she's not going to put herself out there and like actually try to experience it. And I think like post Landon's death was probably like that whole time was when she was really recognizing that she'd maybe squandered some of that
yeah.
time.
And as you pointed out, the fact that she like calls Betty out for kind of
Yeah.
being a dick to her father, and she's
Yeah.
like, "You see how much that man fucking loves you? How much he
Yeah.
does for you?" It's like, so there's a part of her that sees it too, because
That
he's doing the same
knows.
for her.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was,
Yeah. This book is absolutely a case study in generational trauma.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Um, Moving on from there, we'll get to more terrible things later. But first. I want to stay away from Leland for now. We'll touch on him next. So, talking about the other four siblings, now that we know their whole story and can talk about everything, I was wondering who or what stood out to you the most between Trustin, Freya, Lint, Flossie. We can touch on all of them. We can touch on whoever you want here.
I mean, I think there's only three that I like really want to talk about. Flossie can fuck right off. Like I
Well, I
didn't.
think she has some interesting story points, though, to be fair.
Okay, sure, but she was a bitch,
She was
and
a bitch.
I didn't like most of the things that happened with Flossie.
No, as I think you're supposed to. Remember,
Um,
though, she's most like me growing up, but not for those things.
but you're not. But she's not, or you're not her. Like she. Oh man. Trustin, like all of them seem to have a thing,
Mm,
like Trustin's drawings, Frey's singing, Lynn's rocks,
Lint's
or I
rocks.
guess you could call it imagination because he definitely had a lot of imagination's maybe the nice way to put it
Yeah.
because but and then I mean Flossie had her dreams
Her
and
acting,
her
her
acting and
non-talent acting.
right. Oh my God, that was like hilarious of her mom to be like, I don't even
She's
do
only lacking one thing. What is it, Mom? Talent.
it. Um, and like obviously Betty with the writing, but I think that that was just what about each of the siblings. I think Landon did a really good job of bolstering all of those things in his kids, so that like when Betty's telling stories about them, those are the points that shine the brightest. Um, and the things that I think she obviously appreciated other things about her siblings, but like she was also recognizing the talent in each of them.
Mm.
Um, and I think that was, I don't know, I don't have siblings, so I don't know what kind of um
It's a mixed.
relationship
It's a
is
mixed
normal. And
bag.
like, what's that?
It's a mixed bag. Trust
Yeah,
me.
yeah. I mean, and it makes sense that, they have arguments and like they
Yeah.
don't get along all the time and but there were all these little bright spots of a lot of them like supporting each other in different ways. A lot of it was Betty, but I think Freya was very much like a mother figure
Yeah.
a lot of times. And um, I really loved when Tristan would draw the storms and send them to Grandpa Pilark because that was amazing.
Well, he only drew them. Betty was the one sending them the
Yeah, well,
story.
sure, but
Yeah.
she was like, "Can you draw these for me?"
Yes, because she was wishing him ill after she learned about what he really was. She
Yeah.
was wishing him ill by sending him the storms that Trustin was drawing. And I think Mama or whatever they called her,
Yeah.
even pointed Mama Lark was like, I think it's them storms that killed him. And Betty's like, yes.
Yes. I was even like, "Yes."
Yeah. Uh,
Um, but
for
yeah, I think just like all the siblings had like little things. It was kind of like Captain Planet, like with their powers combined. Like
I reference Captain Planet later in
amazing.
random recommendation. Nice. We did not talk about this. So I was kind of looking at this is like a way to touch on like different story points and stuff. And what I saw is like not the most important, but like had like important moments for them with Trustin. When Trustin dies, like because we see it with others, and like we learned there's two other children who die very early on. I should have written down their names. One was like Wakanda, and I forget the other one's name. One of them choked on a Buckeye, which is why
Okay.
they left Ohio. I forget how the other one died, but the Buckeye one was still like a baby,
Yeah.
or like a tot. Like they were both under 4.
Yeah.
So Trustin was like the one who had like gotten the most life, but still died at 10. And his death, we see how much it shakes their father. It shakes the whole family, obviously. But like Landon, having already experienced the death of two other kids, you would think he'd be a little bit more, and not prepared, but like be able to handle it. I don't know, you don't handle it better. Speaking from somebody who doesn't even have kids, obviously it's a shit show. But the way it broke him, I think just showed how important Trustin was to the family. Kind of what I said before, like he seemed like the one who didn't have a flaw to him, who didn't have that dark side or something that a moment where you were like, holy shit, why is Trustin doing that? That seems so out of character. He never had that. He was like very much the glue of the family that they all knew they could go to at any point, and he was just going to be Trustin. Like it was going to be great. So his funeral was just so devastating as Betty talks about how the her dad built the coffin for him, and he puts the two herbs in there to guide him on his passage. But then the family has to walk him because that's the tradition of the Cherokee, according to Landon, where they will carry him from here to his burial place, which is a cemetery across town. And they talk about like even some of the terrible, I think Ruthie's was one of them, or maybe somebody near her, were like throwing carnations or something into the road as they were passing by with him. And just that was just so emotional, as you really felt like for these terrible things had already happened. We'd seen what happened to Freya, we learned what happened to Elka, but this was like really pulling something out of our present day from the family that felt like we were leaving a gaping fucking hole.
Yeah.
So that was tough.
Yeah, for sure.
With Flossie, what I wanted to talk about with her was just how bad of a fucking mother she was. Like,
Oh my God, the train?
I mean, how bad she was in general, right? But as we said in spoilers, like she hooks this older, I don't know, I think he was like maybe 3 or 4 years older than her
Yeah, he wasn't that much older.
guy, that catches her eye, or she catches his eye, and his family owns like the vineyards. And her mom's like, hey, if you can get pregnant, he has to marry you, and then you're not poor like us anymore. And Flossie buys all into that, and
And she
just
like throws it in her mom's
it
face.
highlights her worst fucking parts,
It
which are
really
most of
does.
she has the baby, she doesn't want anything to do with the baby.
And then
And
she ties him to the fucking train tracks.
yes, well, before that, to get there though, interesting. Again, this is just how shitty the world was for women back then. But because she doesn't want to sleep with her husband anymore, he gets a divorce attorney because his family can afford them to basically be like, she's not doing her womanly needs or whatever the fuck they put it.
Duties.
Gets her divorces her, and then doesn't want anything to do with the baby. And like it was interesting because Betty is finally being like, oh, she seems like she's really turned a corner. Like she seems like she's actually being a good mother, and it's like doing stuff with Nova, and then yeah, she ties his shoelaces to the fucking train tracks.
I was distraught during that bit. It was one of those like sit up, be like, is this really happening?
I almost put the book down. Like
Yeah.
there was like a paragraph left, and like Betty is like, and then the train comes. I was like, nope, I can't. I really can't, because
I was like, is this really happening?
Flossie does like have last regrets and does go try to free him, but then she tied his fucking shoe to the track.
Successfully.
And he's old enough. I don't know how old he was, a couple of years he had to be, because he was like, Mama, train, Mom, the train's coming. And then he's like, help, help, help. Like, Jesus Christ, Flossie, why? Um, yeah, that was just, and then, she's not paying attention to him, and he falls off the bed and cracks his head. And so she abandons him. And for all intents and purposes, it seems like the kid was better off without her. Again, wondering how much of this is real or not, because in our story, Flossie dies of an overdose, but it sounded like she's still actually alive. So I'm not sure.
Oh, I thought,
She definitely, she mentioned in that blog that
yeah.
she talked to her aunt Flossie, uh,
Yeah.
which the author was born in 85. So there's no way.
Oh, okay. I
Was
thought,
it? Maybe
yeah.
she's a little bit younger. But anyway, I don't know. Maybe I'm getting some things confused, but I'm pretty sure Flossie at least didn't overdose in 1980 when they said she did.
Sure, 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 sure.
Again, Betty had 12 kids or 12. She was one of 12 in real life, so maybe she's pulling from one of the other ones. I don't know. But yeah, Flossie was just a shit show, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, big time.
With Lint, I loved how their dad was like, "Hey, we have to watch out for your brother because they will come take him away and they will break him and he will come back." And we hear that story too from the woman that wears the mask. No, the old woman, Wormwort or whatever she was, that Betty stays with her because she needs help every once in a while. She stays in the shotgun
Oh,
shack,
I liked her.
and she talks about how she loved a woman, and
Yeah.
because they caught her and the girl when they were both teenagers, they sent her off, and sounded like she got
Simon.
a whole bunch of lobotomies. Um, and like they
And
just
Guys in Quicksand.
dies in quicksand, but they didn't know anything about mental health. So it's like stories like that Landon hears, and he's like,
Yeah.
we can't leave your brother alone, and we also can't let them know about your brother. We
Yes.
can't let them take him.
Yes.
But Lint was still like, he was there enough to like, yeah, we're never really told what he is going through, but he definitely had demons.
Yeah.
But he still fucking loved his family so goddamn fiercely. And when he has that moment, when Betty has that moment with him where she's like, you need to stop having these made up illnesses because everyone that dad heals you for, he takes into himself and he's got this glass heart that's going to break. And Lynn's like, well, you don't need me. She's like, of course we need you. You're the foundation. You're the youngest sibling. You hold up the whole home of our family. I was like, God damn it, Betty. You're like, you see those moments where she's very much like her father.
Yeah. Well, and then there was that really great moment when she's confronting Leland and he went rolls up with Tristan's slingshot, which was a two-person action slingshot. And he was like, no, he was there with me. I like broke.
It's like I felt trust him with me. He was holding it as
Yeah.
well.
Oh,
And then lastly, Freya. Uh, again, I think the abuse she was, uh, the way she was being treated by Leland, I think was very obvious before it was literally drawn out for us.
mhm.
And I think you saw that with how she reacted to him all the time and everything. And the birch bark or whatever the bark that she puts inside of her
The
to
aborts.
yeah
Yeah.
to force an abortion and then almost bleeds out from it right after her mom tells her that she
Right.
knew somebody who did that. Well,
Right.
guys, let's put fucking two and two together here. It really frustrated me that for like as much as they loved they loved their children, they
Mhm.
really seem to like miss some obvious
Turn a
thing.
blind eye or
Yeah.
just not really be observant enough.
So remember in the beginning where Alka would get upset at Freya for how she was caring for Lint. She was like, "That
Hmm.
ain't your baby," blah blah blah. There was part of me that was like, "Wait, is it her baby? Like, is that her
Mm,
baby with Leland?" But then obviously it wouldn't make
mm.
sense that then they would know what Leland had done,
Right.
So it didn't work out that way. But there was a part of me that wondered
I was
that.
concerned.
I don't think I've ever wished for somebody to get away more. Like I was like, girl, get free. You
Leave.
need to
Yeah.
get free and never look back.
And like the moment when she Betty and Freya are talking, and Betty's admitting to like knowing what happened, and Freya's like in denial about it, or and then kind of goes on to explain like what the ramifications for her would be
Yeah.
if this came to light. And that was so depressing. God, weird deja vu about this conversation, which is strange. Um, but I think that that's just so indicative of how shitty our culture is, that is logical. That is a logical fear that she had, that
Yep.
she couldn't come out and say these things because she's going to be the one with the worst outcome.
And
Which
then,
is wild to think that it could be worse than what's actually happening.
yep. And then on top of that, Freya and I think Leland more so paints how bad it will go for
Right,
Betty as well because she didn't say anything. She didn't do anything. She didn't come
right,
forward when it was happening. So now it's you're either a liar or you're a bad sister, and there's no in
right.
between.
Which,
But
like, so when she, correct me if I'm wrong, when she witnesses Leland rape Freya in the car, Betty is like 10?
yeah, I think it was after she had heard her mother's story. So I was
Right.
thinking, yeah, because she buries her mother's stories first, and then she
Yep.
buries Freya's story next. So
Freya's
yeah, I was thinking 10, 11, somewhere in
10,
there. Yeah.
11. Okay. So, like, still young enough to not really understand what's happening. I mean, like, she obviously, having heard the story from her mom, has a little
Yeah.
bit of a better understanding than maybe your average 10 or 11-year-old. But when Leland is like, you didn't say anything, you didn't do anything, like when I was relaying this terrible story to Barry, and I was like, and she witnesses this, and he's like, wait, why didn't she say anything? And I was like, because she was a child.
Yeah.
And like watching your almost adult sister be overpowered by your adult brother, like I could understand not saying. Like, what do you, I mean, I guess there was an opportunity she could have hollered, but like
Yeah. But also just being paralyzed. Like she's up in the
fear.
barn, not, I forget what she was doing in the barn, hiding or chasing after something or
Yeah,
whatever. And
I think she was hiding.
she just becomes a witness to that. Like it's,
Yeah,
yeah, it's not like she was being sneaky and trying to like, oh,
right.
what is
To
Leland and
suss
Freya
out
doing?
something.
You
Yeah.
know?
And
Uh,
like And then just like the guilt of holding on to it. And then of course like she talks to Freya before
Yeah.
anyone else, and then the threat or the looming fear of, if I say something, Freya's gonna kill herself and it will be my fault. Like, I just, what an awful position to be in. Everyone except Leland can go fuck himself.
And then when she does try to bring it up years later, Freya has an
Pulls him
episode where
down.
she just tears apart their entire garden and then slits her wrist. And is like the next day is basically like, Betty, do you believe me now? Do you believe that I do it? And while that was terrible, this was that moment that I was touching on with Landon, where he talks about how that night when Freya is recovering from her self harm, he climbed a rope into heaven and found the beaches of where the jars of your life are spread out, and each jar has the amount of sand in it that is your life. Every grain is like a moment of your time. And he hands Freya a jar. He says, I found yours, Freya, and I found that it's full. So you're gonna get gray hair and you're gonna do all this great stuff and you're gonna, um, and then Freya smashes the jar and like again though, now back to Betty. Betty the next day as her dad's trying to like find every
Pick
grain
up
because
all
he
the
feels like
grain.
he has to put Freya's life back together literally here. Betty is doing that support too. Like it's one of those things again where it's like I don't know what to do, so this is what I can do, and now this
Right.
has happened, and this is what I can do, and like
Right.
there was a lot of moments I really wish that her parents asked more. Like after what Leland does to her, where he uses her hair to hold her down by like tying
He
it
cuts
against
it
the,
all
he
off.
cuts it all off. So he can't do that again. And like her dad, Landon even mentions, he's like, "Oh, you cut off your beautiful hair. Like, why would you do that? Nobody, like,
Yeah. And her answer was like, so, I don't know, um, passable, I
I
guess.
guess.
Like they could just overlook it. I also was just thinking back to when Betty's confronting Leland about it, and or was it that? Anyway, she mentions at some point that Freya's like been saying things about this and the songs
In
that
her
she writes.
song,
And
yeah,
I think it's what, since she was 5?
when she was 5 years old. Yeah.
Um, and it's just wild to me because like Landon is a really observant person. And their mom, Alka, I feel like experienced that kind of trauma or a similar
Yeah.
kind of trauma to the point where like there's got to be signs that maybe she wasn't present mentally enough to notice those
Yeah.
things. But it's just really sad to me that with parents that were like that, Freya, even as a young kid, didn't feel comfortable going. And like probably Leland threatened her because that's something he would do.
And he was 5 years older. So it started when he was 10 and she was 5, as Leland
And it
is,
was just them. They didn't have any
yeah,
of the other siblings.
right. Um, and he talks about how this was during the time they were moving around a lot and, their dad was working odd hours and odd jobs. So a lot of the manly stuff fell on him. Like he
I
even
had
had
to
to
work.
drive the car because they had like changed it so a kid could drive it. And,
He was
so he,
deprived of his childhood.
and as Betty put it, so what, you thought you fucking deserved something?
Payment? Was she her the payment?
Yeah, you decided to ruin your sister's entire life. So good job on you, Leland. We'll get into him next. Before we do, the last thing I wanted to talk about with Freya was Ah, there's multiple inserts throughout the story
Mm.
about clips from the newspaper about somebody going around breathed firing a shotgun or firing a gun. And like some of the stories seem fantastical. Some of the stories seem like there is somebody actually doing it. This all plays back to the house that they were living in. Because again, 8 people disappeared from that house and there was 8 bullet holes in the house. So people think like the shooter is back now that somebody is living in their house on Shady Lane or whatever. We find out that Betty had followed uh, Freya one night and saw her get this shotgun from a stump in the ground and fire it. And then after Freya dies, she starts doing it as well because she learned from Freya later on that she believed they were insects trapped in a jar and they needed more holes to breathe. So she was firing holes into the air to give them more breathing. in this small place. So that was just like, I wondered where we were going the entire time with that and how it made sense. And that moment was like, Jesus.
Which it was a really interesting way to tie that in. I also find it funny, or funny, maybe isn't the right word, how the town is called Breathed, and
Mm,
it's like more
we're breathing.
breath was trying to be gained.
Touche. So let's talk about the other bag of shit. So what did you think of the twists when it came to Leland, both about his true father and what he did to Freya, including killing her?
Um, like surprised, not surprised. Like it was um a little bit of a bomb that he was Grandpappy Lark's kid, but also it made sense. There was one of the times that the family went over to the house, and I don't remember if it was, I think it must have been for the funeral.
Yeah,
Because Landon came with them and he hadn't been allowed previously, and he picked up a picture and was like, "Wow, you look just like your grandpa."
yeah.
Um, and it was this weird moment that I didn't really think much about. And then later I was like, "Oh, damn."
There were some Harlan Coben breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs.
Yeah, which I wasn't really on the lookout for,
No, me
honestly.
neither.
Um, so it was surprising in that respect.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, the way that Lint had been like, "I always knew he was a demon." I'm like, yeah, dude,
Yeah.
fully. Of course you did. And then
Yeah.
I wrote down, of course he went to be a preacher.
Yeah. Yeah. Always looking for man of faith.
Yeah.
Um, because that's what Grandpappy Lark hid behind too, which is
Mm.
not everybody, to be clear. I know there's
Right.
other people that listen and watch this, but um uh, with Leland, with the his father, I did not see that coming. Like you, I wasn't looking for that.
No.
But I think going back, if you like reread the first chapter about how their parents meet,
Mhm.
um, uh, Landon is like shocked by how quickly this white woman
Yes.
especially, just comes on to him
Yes.
and is like very aggressive about sleeping with him. So that really makes sense.
Yes.
It all makes sense as it's tied
She,
together.
um, I don't think was like thinking very far ahead, but she chose wisely.
I think he was just nice to her.
Yeah.
Like she's
No,
sitting
but
in,
that's what I'm saying. Like she
yeah,
chose wisely, as in like she could have picked, I don't know, somebody else who was going to be abusive, but no, she happened to find him, and it really worked out for her in that regard.
yeah. And as you said, as we see in his death, like I think there was a lot of love there that she
Mhm.
couldn't always express.
Mhm.
So I was definitely shocked by that. I was not shocked that Leland killed Freya.
Oh,
I think
no.
similar to the abuse, that was really clear based on how it was written, where Betty talks about hearing the phone ring and then arguing, and then Freya denies all of it. Like, who else is it going to be
Yeah.
other than fucking Leland?
The thing that was shocking about that bit to me was that Betty came back and like slept with a dead body because she like didn't realize that Freya was dead, and I
So
was
that was interesting because how did you take that as like so she has this it seems like she leaves that night. She goes down this road that she just
there's the
doesn't
owl.
remember going on. There's an owl trapped in a barbed wire fence, and an older woman who says she lives in the house across the street is like,
Oh,
oh, she made up her own destiny here because the owl went after a mouse because they talk about how some birds like place shit on here or some shit. I don't know. But the owl's stuck, and she's like, the only way we can free her is if we cut the wire. And if we cut the wire, wire is expensive. And Betty convinces this older woman to cut the wire, free the owl, and then goes back to Freya and wakes up the next morning, realizes Freya's dead, goes to check on the owl, and finds a dead owl in the spot where she
like a dream.
remembers. And an old farmer, a man is there, not the woman.
Well, and there's no farmhouse. There's no like
Yeah,
little
it was like it's a
shenanigans
pasture
going.
full of cows. So like
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was just her. She had dreamt like she ended up had well because Freya she would have woken up. I don't know.
That's
I
why
didn't
I was
know.
like, just now when you started talking, I was like, oh, she dreamt the owl thing.
Right,
But then I was like, but how would he have gotten in and done all of this if Betty was in bed
right.
sleeping the whole time?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that actually played out.
I don't know.
I
But
also
that bit
wondered.
was a little weird. I was like, you were there? That's so traumatic.
Yes, that would be. Um, I think that's where like the storytelling gets a
Mm.
little convoluted. Because I wonder what maybe she's just trying to bury that trauma. But again, if she was there at all when Leland was doing this, there's no way she would have known. It's not like
Mm-mm.
Freya would have gotten stung by that bee and then laid down with her sister,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm not sure how that actually.
Well, and then Leland said something about like it's your fault because like Betty's the one that like keeps the bees in jars or creatures in jars. Was it like her?
No, she does do that, but no, he was trying to blame her. I'm not sure why he was trying to blame her at that point. But it wasn't like a bee that she kept. No,
Okay.
no. But yeah, she did do that. But she also did that with like praying mantis and other things too
Yeah,
later
yeah,
on.
yeah.
Fuck. There's something else I wanted to touch. Oh, yeah. So I touched on it quickly in spoilers, but because of how she dies, people think it's a suicide. And like again, this is her dad being like of such a good heart, but also
Mhm.
not like seeing the full picture
Really?
here. So because she's a suicide, they cremate her. And her dad decides that the best way to protect her soul is to spread her ashes as far as they can, away from each other. Because his reasoning is if it takes God longer to find all the pieces of Freya, maybe his heart will have mended enough to allow her into heaven by the time she's complete. So he drives the car and he has Betty stand out like basically the sunroof in the back and throw the ashes through around town basically. And like no thought at all about how traumatizing that is to your fucking like I think she's 14 or 15 at this point.
Yeah.
Like Jesus Christ. And like that was so hard to read. She has that
Yeah.
moment too where when Freya was sick, uh, with the bark thing, she had to be taken to the hospital, and Betty and Flossie write goodnights to her on scraps of paper, and then that becomes a thing where they pass the goodnight paper back and forth to each other of all their goodnights, so they know they're not forgetting them. Betty mixes the ashes with the goodnight she's had since then, and is like talking about throwing all that out. It was just such a Jesus Christ moment.
Yep.
Um, and then also going back to Leland's whatever uh what's that where you like admission? How about that? Where he talks about the whole reason he had to do it was because Freya was
Oh,
pregnant and she decided she was going to keep it this time, and that's why he had to kill her. Because that, again, being the person of faith that he is, that's an abomination if you have a child based on incestual relationships. But it's okay to have
meanwhile,
those incestual relationships. You just can't have the
yes.
child be born.
But then I loved how she poured salt in that by being like, well, you're Grandpappy Lark's kid.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
you're an abomination too,
you're an
son.
abomination.
Yeah, Leland
Oh,
was
and then the
obviously a
bit where
good
he
guy.
like caught on fire didn't catch on fire.
Yeah, no, she like convinced him that hell was already burning him.
Love
I'd
that
like
for
I'd like to think
love
that
that
was
for him.
more her fantastical thinking, but I'd also like to
Sure,
think
but
it
I
really
liked
happened.
it.
Yeah, I want it to really have happened to him. Moving on, we get towards our end here, which is when Landon dies, and his funeral is quite crowded, and many stories are shared. I was wondering if there are any of his stories or stories that were told about him at this point that stood out to you. Now that we can cover everything,
My God, I cried so
I
much.
put that too. I cried
Like,
through most of the ending.
yeah, constant tears. Um, I think so. Well, all the stories were quite good, honestly. But Betty's story about like her feet and his hands, and it just kind of like goes back to what I was talking about the very first question about how their relationship um was so solid, and he was so like supportive and lifty uppy um about just her like coming into her own and like recognizing her own beauty and her own worth and like oh that was just so sweet and like I think she says at the end maybe it was at the end of that story but how like he was God to her like a God.
Yeah. Here's what every kid wants. That oh no, she mentions that when it comes to Nova. because Nova, his grandchild, lost his kid. He was like, "What do you think he's thinking right now?" And she says, "I told him what everyone wants to hear from their kids, or something like that. He thinks you're a god."
Yes.
Because at that point in her life, she remembers that he was.
Yes.
Um,
And
you're
then the other story, sorry,
no
was
good.
the guy with the balloons.
Cotton. Yeah.
Yeah, Cotton. So like he explains that like Landon had given him this solution. So his wife had died and he was totally devastated. And Landon had suggested writing her a letter and sending it up on a balloon every day. So he did this without fail for like decades, it sounded like.
Yeah.
Um, and Landon, unless he like wasn't in breathed, left a rock, or what was a rock,
Yeah,
right?
rough.
In this one particular tree, and that was like their the signal that his dead wife had gotten the letter, and like he knew that it was Landon doing it, but he was still like,
Yeah. Yeah, the whole idea. So Cotton was a white man who married a black woman, or was with, I don't know if they had gotten married yet or not. And she was, because of racism, believe it or not, murdered brutally. And he never recovered from her. Her name was Vickery. And so, yeah, we knew about Cotton the whole book, about how he would
yeah.
write a letter and fill a balloon and just send it up in the sky. And
And you're like, this crazy man.
a couple times Betty finds the letter, and like in it, Cotton is living their lives. Where he's like,
As if
our
they're
oldest son graduated high school today, and he was, while we were proud of him, he was so embarrassed by the way you made him dress or whatever, and like it's really incredible things. But then, yeah, at the funeral at the end, Cotton tells the story about how Landon showed up with a bottle of helium and a bag of balloons and said, send her a letter every day and look in the weeping willow, and you'll know she got it by there being a stone there. And every day you would fucking put a stone there because that's the person Landon was. um yeah, the story that Betty told, as you touched on, where every step she took was in his hands, because she talks about how she was drowning in this swamp because of the racism, and school was so hard and everything was just piling on top of her. This is why you should subscribe to YouTube, because Taj is falling apart. And she talks about how she realized when she finally got out, or like started getting out of some of the water, she was stepping on his hands. He was always lifting her up, and how he would continue to do that even without him. She feels every step she has a footprint and a handprint in. The typewriter being left in the
oh,
old car for her, and how he had like chapter one, Betty. That made me cry. That he had left that for her, because again, as we touched on, he was just so good at leaving mementos for his children and knowing how to raise them, and knowing what each one of them needed. So,
and then like when Alka puts the quilt in the coffin and she had like done all this embroidery on it with like all of their names.
of the family tree, yeah.
And Betty had thought like, oh, she'd seen her doing it earlier and was like, oh, she's just fixing a hole or something, but then like showing some actual love.
Yeah. Um, and I did appreciate how we dealt with his deaths too.
Yeah.
Before we got there, we touched on this before, but Betty taught in the chapter before, she asks him about the scar on his hand. And he tells her that a magician came to town with a bunch of books when he was 14, and it would release its story in fire. And on the last page, a hummingbird flew out, or a bird flew out, and he knew that that bird would catch fire everywhere. So he tried to catch it, but he burned his hand on that bird. And then eventually the water, it rained, because water and fire have always been enemies, and the bird couldn't dodge it. So thankfully nothing burned down. And then he tells her the true story, which is that a rich man came to town with a Model T and nobody knew what it was. And long story long, because Landon was near it, he used a bunch of racial language and then burned his hand on the engine, because Landon mentioned that he wanted to live in a world that maybe God would turn the world dark, so nobody knew the color of your skin and you just have to greet each other as if you were equals. So the man burned his hand to say, well, now if I shake your hand, I'll know that you're not my equal, basically. Um, and as she's telling that story, the next chapter, she tells the story of how he dies. And it's a beautiful moment between the two of them sitting out on their old rambler out in the woods when he basically begins to collapse. And in real life, that so then the next chapter starts with her telling the real story of how he just kind of gets up to go inside and collapses and starts bleeding profusely from everything. And they try to save him and it doesn't work. Um, but I just loved how she decided to portray that, where she showed you one of his truths and one of his stories and how much more beautiful they are, and then did the same thing with his death and showed you one of the truths in one of his stories. It's a great book. This is, if you're watching on YouTube now, we're both crying. Now, why do you do this to yourselves? Yeah, he was such a strong character for somebody who wasn't your main character or your main point of view. He might as well have been your main character.
Yeah.
And as I touched on before, how much he pointed out how important women were in Cherokee culture, and how when they were fixing the house or planting the garden or whatever, everything was based on one of his daughter's measurements. The corn will be buried 2 knuckles deep, and this post will be put the distance of your foot. And Betty even mentions at some point she's rocking herself in the chair and her foot has outgrown
Oh
the original
yeah.
measurement of that post because she continued to grow, but that doesn't matter because this is the new measurement now. And um, just how much he loved those kids and wanted to empower, especially his girls, was just
Yeah.
it was really great to read. And again, it's similar to the bad parts of the story. When you're reading those, like he felt so real because of how this was portrayed.
Yeah.
It was just so strong to get
Yeah.
through. And then that final moment too, where Freya had mentioned years before that she had made the record outside the toy store where they let you record your own voice, and she had sang a song into it. And this, if this is real, I mean, incredible of Freya.
Yeah.
But she borrowed a record player because the family never had one. She borrowed a record player so her dad could hear Freya's voice one more time. And of course, it was a song about her father. So so many powerful moments. Again, this last, I think it was like 60 pages. I was just crying
Oh my
throughout.
God. And then the like end when she finally leaves and she's carrying the balloon.
Leaves a note for him one last time. And even Lynn's reasons to stay is that
Yeah.
this was the last place mom and dad were together.
Yep.
So I want to be here. And she talks about how he kept doing the herbal remedies, and sometimes when people would call him Landon by mistake, because he left it because the name above the barn was Landon's, he would just smile and answer to it. So
Yeah.
very powerful stuff at the end. I mean, very powerful stuff throughout this
Throughout.
book. Heartbreaking for a lot of it, incredibly heartwarming at the end. So, was there anything else you wanted to touch on here?
So the only thing, and I don't really want to touch on it, but I feel like I need to because it's part of my scoring, is the kitten.
Oh my God, yeah.
So this was like, I don't want to say it was more traumatic than the multiple rape stories because that wouldn't really be accurate. It was traumatic in a different way. Um, I think uh, I really struggled with that portion of the story. Um, so for context, the they've a cat, kind of a pregnant cat, like adopts the family and stays at their house, and it's gonna like the birth is imminent, and Betty's really excited and is kind of like the one kind of spearheading the whole operation, and she had this whole area prepared, but the cat ends up having its babies on Alka and Landon's bed. Landon is away out of town, and it's just Alka, and she's having one of her episodes. So the cat is with all of her kittens on the bed, and she just like randomly gets up and throws the cat out the window. It dies, and then she gathers up all the kittens in a quilt. I don't even think I can.
Gathers up the kittens in the quilt and starts beating them against the floor. and Betty tries to stop her, and she basically like grabs onto Betty's hands on the quilt and then makes Betty participate in killing all of the kittens. Um, it makes no sense as it happens. It's incredibly traumatizing, obviously, for Betty. And her mother's only thought is that like it ruined their quilt.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that she was forcing Betty to do it, she was like, if I'm doing it, you're doing it.
Yeah,
And like, I just like, I don't understand the reasoning. I don't get it.
that made no. It was again just one of those moments where it felt like her mother disassociated from herself, and I don't know if it was I'm gonna save these things from life because life is shitty, or if it's like I
It
don't
just
know,
was so
I have
sensitive.
the power to do this. I mean, honestly, with all of their like I don't know the proper word to put it, but like outbursts, like when Freya destroys the garden, when Alka does this, it's like such a, it's again, it's a 0 to 100 where like they seem fine, and then they're doing the most damage that they can do.
Yeah.
And it's like it was just really tough to read and see, and like, yeah, um,
And
it
poor
made no
Betty.
sense.
And Betty's just like explaining that like she, for weeks after is just like dreaming of the sounds and sights and oh my God, it's atrocious.
And
I
she,
almost put the book down. Like almost couldn't do it.
there's quite a few moments, and again, I think it gets back to the writing where it's like it's so realistic that you just, I mean, that one feels too like that would be a story that Betty just remembers, that would be like a
Right.
real thing that
Right.
happened. Um, I forget what she did with the mother cat's body. I think maybe she just buried it. I don't
I
remember,
think
but
she buried
she
it.
takes like her father's prized ark that he had made,
Carved.
carved, and like puts the kittens in that, and then sets them off down the river because her dad says that like the river is meant to like take that pain and those terrible things away from you. And like he even asks like, "What happened to the ark?" And she's
Yeah.
like, "It's gone." I don't know. Um, yeah.
Betty's like again, just like the strength that we talked about in the first question, like to deal with all of this, to have all of this weight on her, and like I don't know. I appreciate her coping mechanism of like writing it down and burying it. Like I think that's
Yeah.
somewhat healthy. um, but yeah, it's wild that she seems to have turned out so normal.
Yeah. And there's so many other things we could touch on, like the faraway place, the little stage that
Oh,
they made, and
yes.
how like when their mother cuts her wrists,
Self-harm.
I don't even remember why she did it.
I don't
What
either. That
upset
was
her so
when
much?
Betty was 7, 8,
Yeah, I don't.
young. It was like earlier on.
I think she just was in like probably a depressed state. I don't think it was anything that actually set her off. I think something happened, and she just decided to do that. But Freya tells them to go to the faraway place, which is their stage, and they cut similar lines in that, and then they pray over it, or they sing to
They
it,
say, yeah,
to try to like send their love and healing into it to heal their mother. And then when Freya cuts herself, Betty
Betty
does the
does the
same
same.
thing. And when she learns the story of her mother, when she witnesses what Freya was, she also learns from Flossie that no doesn't mean no when it comes to teenage
Right.
boys. So that was a whole nother moment in Flossie's life. And she takes those stories and writes them down and buries them under the stage as she tries to like
I
get rid
also
of
thought it
these stories.
was really interesting in that Flossie situation, how um Betty like went and hitchhiked and like found this random dude
Mm.
and like they had an afternoon together basically, and they started kissing and then she said no and he respected that, and then I thought that was just like a really interesting, I don't know, sort of test that she did, like
Yeah.
risky I guess, but like
And he was also like, I think she was 11, 12 at the time, and he was like 13, 14.
yeah,
So a little bit younger, but also he asked her what the deal with that was. And she said, I wanted to see if the word no still had power.
yeah, She's like such a remarkable character. Like honestly, not something I would have thought to have done, but like it's very impactful, that story.
I it's tough as we're talking about this because I just feel like I keep getting reminded of like, oh, this story and this story. Like
Yeah.
this is what we were talking about before we started recording. It's a there's a plot there, but
Yeah.
it's really just a collection of stories
Yeah.
about her growing up, and like all of them are so very powerful.
I
Uh,
I will say like when I first started reading it, it took me a little bit to like get into it because it
yeah,
felt like you were saying like it's just this collection of stories. I was like, where are we going with this? Like it
yeah.
doesn't feel as though there's through lines. But then once I got into it, I was like on a tear.
I think you had to treat it with a touch of that nonfiction where it's like
Yeah.
understanding I'm just learning about somebody's life, and there's not going to be
Yeah.
there was I
No,
mean Landon's death was like a big moment for us to
yeah.
like conclude on, but
Yeah.
you knew that it wasn't going to be like any there weren't going to be bows at the end of this. You were just it was just a wondering of how far into Betty's life we were going to get. And I
Yes.
think once you accepted that, it was
It was smoother sailing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and just fucking story after story hitting you
Yeah.
over the head with
Well, and I think we talked about this before we started recording too. Like each new chapter, I was like, okay, who's dying now?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, as soon as they started, it was like,
yeah.
okay, let's touch on this and that.
Yeah.
Um, so, were there any other ones you wanted to touch on? I feel like this is going to be one you listen to and you're like, oh shit, we didn't even talk about that, but
Oh,
we
probably, but
have
I'm not
spent
gonna
a good
think
amount of time on it. So, is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm just giving it one last thought here, but I think we've covered
I
most
think
of
we've
it.
done it.
Yeah, who knows? Um, yeah, because as soon as you start thinking, you're gonna think of other things. Well, anyway,
You already did.
the woman with the mask thing, that was weird. Because we
That
talked about
was
how they
weird.
like react to 100. That was Betty's moment. And okay, that's what I wanted to touch on. Jesus Christ, this is how it works. Before I get to the mask thing, before I forget this, because I think it's more important. The thing that upset me about her dad was Betty was pretty even keeled about a lot of things, but she
But
was
then she,
constantly cold to Leland. And when
yeah,
she attacked him, literally
yeah,
tried to cut out his soul, like her
yeah,
father did to Alka's father. Nothing came, like Betty got reprimanded. Nothing was thought about why your little Indian would do that. That frustrated me
yeah.
because, and Leland was definitely getting predatory on her
Oh
that
yeah,
moment she threw rocks at his car
yeah,
and he chased her into the woods. And if dad didn't start hollering, you don't know where that was going to go. But I think we all kind of know where Leland wanted it to go.
yeah,
That was upsetting that nobody really put two and two together there.
yeah. No, that's a really good point.
And it was that same day as the because her reaction to that is to run back
Yeah,
to the woman who used to be a teacher who wears a porcelain mask and nobody knows why, but she's obviously, of course, horrifically disfigured. And Betty just runs up and takes her anger out on this woman for some reason, rips her mask off, finds out there's nothing wrong with her. But the woman describes herself and sees herself as just a horrible mess of pus and boils and missing parts of her face and all this different stuff, obviously dealing with her own demons. But that made it was like, why? Why did Betty do that? That's felt so just, I guess she had to get it out, but I don't know. It was such a
so
random person to attack.
it is a random person to attack. I do think that it follows in a common thread of Betty's personality as a bit of a secret keeper. Like
Yeah.
she's been um, let into, not of her own volition, these these secrets. And I think when she after she gets like she wasn't arrested, but after she's like in custody or like the authorities are talking to her about her sort of explosion with the mask lady, and they're like, well, what did it look like?
Yeah, because everyone wants to know.
Right. And she like keeps the secret. She like maintains this woman's delusion.
Yeah.
If that's what she wants, that's what she'll do. It was, I don't know, I think that's just like yeah, pattern of Betty being the, I don't know.
It was just the one, it was one of the times where I was like, I don't like this version. Like, it was tough
Yeah.
because she's still a kid, right? And
Yeah.
like, you just see that and you're like, oh, she's lashing out. It's like, why would she do that? But then also you're like, she could control that.
Yeah.
This is, somebody just tried to put the most extreme power over her and she needed somewhere to put that
Right.
energy. And
An
this was
outlet.
somebody she thought she could do it to, and she could.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just wild. So yeah, there's so much more to this story.
There's a
Um,
lot.
but we're gonna move on. We're gonna move out of spoilers before we think of anything else we can talk about. So we're gonna finish this book off by giving it our grade. We do this based on the D&D scale. So 1 is bad, 20 is good, and then we add or subtract a characteristic, modifier, ability, or skill from the game Dungeons and Dragons that we think best fits it. We alternate every episode. So this time, Taja, you were up first. So what did you give this on the dice roll?
Okay, so I'm giving it a straight roll of 18, which like I feel like it maybe should be higher, but I feel as though it was really tough for me to give this a full 5 stars on Goodreads because it felt, I don't know, it felt weird to be excited about. Do you get what I'm saying?
It felt terrible.
Yeah.
But like we keep touching on, it was written so well.
So well.
It wasn't terrible in the writing. It was written so well. It made you feel terrible, and then you're thinking about those moments, and you're like, how like when I think of 5 stars, I'm like, this
It
brings
was
me
so fun to
joy.
read
This
and it
gives
was
me
so
emotion in a
yeah.
good way. It's like all this. This was
Yeah.
like there's a lot of this book that you read and you're like flinching, or there's moments you want to put the book down. And yeah, I get that. I was on the same level. I was like, is this
It was
five
like
stars? I think it is, but it isn't. I don't know.
I know it felt weird to do 5 stars, so I'm giving it 18 because that's a good number. Um, and I feel like all the things we've already said, like fantastic writing. It's amazing that she doesn't have any sort of formal training. Like she's so good,
Yeah, no kidding.
and it very much felt, and I don't know if this was the point, but it very much felt like Betty was writing the story. Like obviously it's Betty's daughter that's writing the story, but it felt so real.
Yeah,
Um, and the characters were so developed, even though it wasn't like different POVs. Even like the shitty characters like Rufus, like that kind of thing all felt really real. Um, Subject matter really intense to the point sometimes of massive uncomfortability. It wasn't good. It
yeah,
wasn't comfortable while reading it. Um, but it was written so well that it was very emotionally charged
yeah,
and emotionally draining
yeah,
to read. I think, yeah, I think overall just something that I'm gonna be like mulling over for a while, like a lot of things that will stick with me. I will definitely recommend this book to other people.
with a warning.
With a warning.
Yeah.
Yeah, fully with a warning. I was reading it and having all these reactions, and Barry was like, "Oh, yes," and I might recommend this to my coworker, and I was like, "Okay, you got to warn her, got to warn her." But I'm gonna give it, and I don't normally do this, a -1 for animal handling because that, as you saw just now, I couldn't even talk about it. It was like I think like you touched on it, it was that it was so senseless and it just like didn't fit with any of the trauma response. I mean, it probably was a trauma response, but it didn't make sense to me. And it was so vivid and well written. Um, it put me in a place I did not want to be. Um, and yeah, like I'm traumatized from reading that.
Yeah.
And I don't even love cats. I like cats, but I'm still ruined from that. So that's a 17, which I feel like it should be higher, but just like what we were talking about, I feel so confused about how to rate this book.
I mean, I think that's fair, and I think that's probably the best use of animal handling we've ever
Right?
seen. Really right on the nose for it. For me, I'm also giving it an 18 as I interjected in your time. I very much struggled with where this book should be. Because yeah, it's written so goddamn well
Oh, wow.
that it draws you in, and then it just hits you over the head. And like, yeah, I think most of Act Two into Act Three is like it's really terrible stuff that you're living through, whether it's between animal handling or the abuse of children, or
But you're like,
siblings, or death. Like it just gets heavy and heavier. There was multiple times I wanted to put it down, not for the usual reasons where I'm like I was upset, but I was upset because it was like
So
dragging
real.
me into this real world scenario that I did not have my usual issue of visualization here. Like I was very much in the room as this was happening. And that affected me for sure. Um, I don't know. Like this is the first one I think I've had to struggle on that scenario where it's just you want to give it credit, but at the same time you don't want to be like, oh, what are all your 5-star rates? Oh yeah, just read Betty. Like you don't want to just give this out willy-nilly.
Yeah, you need to be prepared.
Yeah, which we were not. Great job, Russ. Don't hand out sequels and maybe do a smidgen of fucking uh review before. Well, and to be fair, what we're gonna get into next, I did no review on, but I think it's okay.
I don't,
Uh,
hey, it has served us like pretty well to the overview. It's fine.
yeah. So I thought there was a lot of ways you could go here. I did not have animal handling, but it did work out perfectly. Like this is also the first time I was like, oh, you could do like religion, you could do charisma, wisdom, performance, medicine. Like there's literally the
Medicine, that'd
a
be good.
wide variety. I'm gonna give this a +2 for nature.
Oh,
The first one being for Landon, just his nature in general and how he like understood how to what each of his kids needed. I think it's interesting that while we're getting the story, well, when Betty's old enough to tell us, like Leland is already pretty much gone.
mhm.
Like kind of her first memories are when he's serving in the military. So it'd be interesting to see because he kind of touches on that. Like his growing up was much different because he was the first one. So maybe Landon had some mistakes there that he righted on the other kids. I don't know, but the other nature being obviously nature and how Landon showed his children, especially Betty, obviously is through her eyes, the ideas and the heritage, the Cherokee ancestry, the beliefs that they had, how they treated the earth, his herbology, and everything else, and like how he would have her repeat it, like which side do we choose the bark from, and what would this plant do, and what would that do, and the story of the three sisters, which I think is super cool and like there's just so much about that about reconnecting back to your past that I really enjoyed too, and the fact again we touched on it that it had to be in southern Ohio in this rural near Appalachia for them to have that connection. Like even when he touches on, geez, the stories just keep coming. After Trustin, and he talks about how you have to climb to a hill to like throw the rock off, right? And that's you getting rid of your sin. And you'll know that man is purged of sin once the land is completely flat because he will have no need for hills anymore. Like those his stories and how he presented life to Betty, especially, I just thought was so incredible. And that connection to nature and how he had that within him and how he really tried to share that with as many people who wanted to hear it. So for me, it's dirty 20. That way, I feel like that makes up for not giving it a 5. It's like, oh, it's not a natural 20, but it's pretty close.
Right?
I don't
I
know,
feel
but
like mine's too low now.
we're fine. I mean, I was originally going to give it a 17 on the dice, and as we were talking, I was like, I think it's got to go a little bit higher because, again, the biggest takeaway is that it probably traumatized me a little bit because it was so well done.
Yeah.
And like, is that fair? I don't know, but like, I feel like I always think back. The first 20 I gave was House in Cerulean Sea, and I can hand that to anyone and be like, read this, and it will make
Yeah.
you feel good, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
This is the
no
first light
offense to
that.
this, but that's not going to do that for everybody.
Mm.
There's a lot of just really heavy things in here that you have to be prepared for.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, maybe I should like Google trigger warnings on any random books I find moving forward. It's too late. I've already given you quite a few. Maybe moving forward. So, yeah, overall, that is an 18 and a half. One of the strongest books. And as I mentioned kind of before, I liked this felt like a really good podcast cleanse where there's quite a few main characters we've had lately where I was like, I don't get this character. I hate this character. Why are you pushing this on me? And Betty was the exact opposite of that.
For
So that
sure.
was good to see. Now we
Yeah.
just need to like research books before we hand them out. So for the last time, the book is Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. It was pretty easy to find. So if you any of this sounded like something you wanted to get more into. And there's plenty of stories. I feel like it's similar to the stories she collected of her grandfather. There's so many stories you didn't hear because there's just so much to them.
Yeah.
It is a little bit longer too. So feel free to find that wherever you want or DM us with your questions and we'll do our best to fill you in. Moving on, we're going to move away from this book, but we're not quite yet done as we have to get to our segments. And we start with current selection, Taja. What else have you been listening to or reading?
Well, so last time I had started A River Enchanted. I finished that, and I've also finished the second book, A Fire Endless. Um, really fun stories for sure. Did you read the second one? No. Um,
No, I
the
haven't
best
found it
way
yet, so I
to
was looking for
describe it is bows,
those. But you
which
still
like
liked it, or
I liked it because I mean, I listened to it and it was extremely satisfying to have a Scottish person read me a book about
yeah,
Scottish fairy tales. Um, but it was, I think for a podcast book, we would have been a little bit negative because of the bows. But sometimes, especially when you're comparing it to something as like, I guess, dark as Betty, like that juxtaposition was nice.
yeah,
Because things effectively worked out. There was still like a good story, and there were some times where I was like, "Oh, I don't know about this," but like, was I actually concerned for the characters? Not really.
yeah. I was
So yeah,
kind
it
of
was fun.
I was kind of bummed when River Enchanted wasn't a standalone. I felt like
Mm,
we could have wrapped that up in one.
hmm.
Um, and I think I haven't read the second one, but I felt like they just kind of like made a reason to stretch it to two. Um, and I wonder when that decision was made.
Yeah.
Because it did seem a little bit like it wasn't flimsy. I felt like we very easily could have tied it up. And
Yep.
then somebody also could have been like, hey, I think you could do two books here. And they were like, okay,
Oh,
like let's do that.
yeah. Yeah. So, I'm not sure that you'll love it. I
Yeah.
I think it was
So
fun. It was fun.
the I found that one at my dump,
Oh,
A River
nice. The River
Enchanted. So I'm
Enchanted.
kind of like doing the same thing with the sequel, where like I keep an eye out. There's actually a used copy of A River Enchanted at my bookstore right now. I'm like, I don't need that one. I need the other one. So like if I find it cheaply, I will get it. I should probably add it to my list because like sometimes when I'm thrift booksing and it's like you're
Oh, yeah.
$2 away from a free shipping.
Oh, totally.
What books do I need?
And now I'm currently like 60% of the way through the Raven Scholar.
Nice.
Loving it.
Yeah.
So good. It's
It's
really entertaining to listen to. The narrator does really good voices and yeah, good things.
I forget his name, but the Fox guy, just how like
Crane? Cr
Kane? Crane?
Kane.
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 Yeah. Just how he like how they embody their
They're
whatever spiritual
guardian.
entity, yeah, guardians. And like even with the main character and how she is very much a raven, it does
Yeah.
give me a little bit of camp, where it's like you're
Sure
definitely a
does.
moose.
Yeah.
Although much higher stakes and everything.
Yes.
But no, that I was really happy about that and really upset that it's not all out because I feel like that is one like I'm holding on to it. You gave it back to me now that you're listening to it. That is one that I'm wondering like, do I wait for like the whole trilogy to come out and then just reread one and just do it all at
Mm,
once? Because that might, I don't know. Maybe I'll see like the response to two, and if it's good, I might hold
yeah.
off. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a bummer that it's not all out. And I am eagerly, well, it already came out, but I think it's the eighth Dungeon Crawler Carl. But I need a Audible credit before I do that. So later next month, I'll be able to start listening to that, and I'm excited.
Nice, nice. For me, I didn't read much. I There's a book I found that I always fall for the steampunks, and
Oh
I
yeah.
always want them to be more than they are.
Mm.
So this book was called The Falling Machine, The Society of Steam, #1 by Andrew Mayer. And boy, it was bad. I didn't feel bad giving it 1 star on Goodreads. That's how bad it was.
One.
I probably would have DNF'd it, but it was only like 200 and something pages. And I was like,
Oh,
I feel
that's not
like it needs to
bad.
be chunkier for me to do that. But I'll like my new defining or definition of DNF is if I don't read for 3 days. That's me
Mm.
literally avoiding a book. So it's like,
Wow.
okay, obviously it's the book, not you. DNF it, pick up a new one. So like I wasn't doing that, but I was probably reading like 10 pages a day. It was so bad.
Oh
Uh,
no.
it was like 1880s industrial revolution in New York City. And part of this industrial revolution brought these like rich inventors to turn themselves into superheroes, using the power of steam and shit. And they also had an automaton, and it was,
Oh, is this the one you were like, there's too many ideas?
yeah, it was just too much going on that and like an attack happens on them right away, and one of them dies, and it's like trying to clean up the society, but also there's a traitor, and also this is happening, and now this woman, the daughter of the industrialist, who's like their leader, that's his whatever name, superhero name. She's like wants to get involved, but she's a woman in 1880, and it's just there's
Can't have
just
that.
so much happening. That I was like, I don't care. Like I started skimming probably 50 pages in. I was like, okay, oh, you're gonna talk
Oh,
about somebody's appearance? Don't care. Let's keep going. Let's just figure out the
oh
story here.
no.
That is also how I'm like, oh yeah, this is probably bad. Depending on when I start skimming and somehow still feel
Yeah.
obligated to finish it. And then today I just started Mistborn,
Oh
by
wow.
Brandon Sanderson. So that is, I wanted to do at least the original series this year.
How
And now that
big
we're,
is Mistborn?
what's that?
How big is the first book?
So it's got, I don't know how many pages it is, but it is like Dune style margins. So she may not be as thick as she looks, but she is like,
She's
well,
chunky.
chonky. I think she's like, I keep calling her she. I think it's like 400 or 500 pages, I want to say, based on
Okay.
that and like a mass marketing setup.
Yeah.
Um, I've spent a couple hours in it, and I'm probably like 75 pages, maybe 80 pages. So, it's already interesting. Okay,
Okay.
so
I mean, he is really good.
and this is like literally this book was the reason that Robert Jordan's widow was like, I need
Yeah.
you to finish The Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
Uh, Robin Hobb is on the front as it's like incredible or something, like a very quick
Okay.
little write, but I'm like, I know her.
Okay.
Obviously it's Mistborn. I'm not. Yeah, they're also I think doing a show and or something of it. So
Yeah.
I wanted to get start reading it before that all happened. So should have more on that next episode. Before we get to what is on that episode, we have your random recommendation. And this is one I talked about last year. And this was me trying out other Jim Butcher as I'm still in the middle of the Jesus Christ, the Dresden Files. As I haven't gone back to those in a while, actually. This was one I found like books 1 and 2 in my bookstore, and I was like, hell, not why not? So it's the Codex Alera series. It is a 6-book series that follows a young boy named Tavi who grows up without magic in a world full of it. And the cool thing about the magic here is you have Furies, is what they're called, and they're basically like elementals. So picture like an Earth elemental, an Air
Mhm.
elemental, where in the city they're treated differently, where they're just kind of treated like the people who are born in the city are like, oh, that's my earth elemental, that's my whatever.
Mhm.
In the country they name them, so it's like, oh, I'm
Like,
calling upon Brutus, who is like
oh,
my mastiff forming earth elemental, who like comes out
okay.
in the form of like a giant hound and will
Sick.
fuck you up.
Sick.
So it's like super interesting because Tavi is born to those country folk. And it's always, of course, like everyone, he seems to have a greater destiny. But because he
Mhm.
doesn't have an elemental or a fury to call upon, he's seen as lesser.
Oh.
So he has to grow up without that. And it's just talking about the difficulties he goes through. Like the country faces an invasion, the first book, and then it like just keeps spiraling from there as he
How
gets
many
older.
are there?
There's 6 books,
Oh,
and they do
wow.
get chunky. It does do that thing where we have multiple point of views. Like we spend a lot of time with Tavi, obviously, but then we have like his mother, we have his uncle, we have this other, I forget what exactly she is in the like hierarchy of the army. But she's like an important woman who can like fly with her air elemental. So she becomes a story. And then eventually we find more characters. So like by the last book, we are jumping around
A
a
lot.
lot. But I would say that there's like good twists and turns that happen throughout. Like even like the Google thing that I looked at was like the first book starts off slow, but it picks up, which is true. But it just keeps kind of growing. And
Did
it
you read
was
all 6 of
interesting to
them?
see Butcher do like that style of fantasy, because I see the Dresden Files as more of like realistic fantasy, if you want to call
Yeah.
that, something with werewolves and witches, but it's still our world, Chicago. So this was his, to me, his first real like world building attempt.
Did you read all 6 of them?
I did read all 6 of them. I gave them to my dad. I'm not sure where he's at in them. But yeah. And then he has another one. It's like the Aeronauts or something like that, but I think he's still writing that. So I haven't picked that
And
one
that's a
up.
different
That's a
world.
different series. Yeah. No, this is 6 and done. But like I forget how many is in the Dresden Files. I
A
feel like that's like
lot.
15 or something.
Yeah.
So he likes the series, but yeah. So if any of that sounded interesting to you, and this is where I said it's like they fight along with Captain Planet, Earth, Wind, Fire, and Water spirits.
Nice.
There was again the Codex Alera by Jim Butcher. I forget what I should have written down what the first one is called, but it's like something Fury is all of them. So it's like this Fury, that Fury, Captain's Fury, whatever. But yeah, check out the Codex Alera by Jim Butcher, and you can see that in places. So that means we have to get to our last piece of business, which is what is on the next podcast. This is one that I have seen all over the internet that I really want to read. So I bought 2 copies of it to force Taja to read it with me. So Taja, what are we reading on the next episode?
Theo of Golden by Alan Levi.
Yeah, so Theo of Golden. It has been all over Goodreads, Twitter lately, as a lot of people have been getting into this. Um, a lot of people are comparing it to like a man called Uwe, things like that, kind of like a heartwarming story.
Okay.
The little blurb I'll steal from the back. One spring morning, a stranger arrives in the small southern city of Golden. No one knows where he has come from or why. But basically, Theo begins connecting with people of this town. And this is kind of their heartwarming experience with him, I guess. And if all this is wrong, then, corrects me on the next episode. But this is literally like, so usually most Fridays I'll go into Goodreads and it'll be like, what are you reading this weekend? And I feel like I see like 2 of these every time,
Really?
where this has become a thing that people are talking about. So we're going to get to that on the next episode. So once again, it's Theo of Golden by Alan Levi. It's relatively new. I think it's the last couple of years. But yeah, so if you want to read that with us, grab it, and hopefully it will be more heartwarming and uplifting than maybe
Yeah,
some of the other
2023.
topics we had to touch on today. So that will be next episode, which means this is it for that. So that will be next episode, which means that is it for this episode. I do think we went a bit longer here. We both cried. So thank you, everybody, for sticking through all of that as we get through some of the OG ABC podcasts where it was mostly me, used to cry all the time. Anyway, Tasha cries when she reads, I cry when I podcast. Moving on, this has been the 119th episode of the ABC Club, the ABC Pod, the Adult Book Club with Tasha and Russell. Keep reading.